Hello, this is Ras Masood here, and you're welcome to our next topic that is about Angular's navigation system. In the previous topic, we set up a basic single page application by using Angular CLI, and it was just a basic application. In this exercise, I just simply copied the same thing into another folder, and we will develop our next thing there. So in my folders, I had this thing called client side, and we worked on the basic single page application using Angular CLI. I just copied over the same code here, and it's exactly the same thing with few minor changes. I'll show you what they are. I've opened the same folder here, and if you can see, I've just changed my app component and we created these three links because we're working on navigation, so we will work on these three links. And if I try to run this application using ng-serve, sorry, so the application is running on port 4200, and if I try to open this port 4200, I can see that application is running. Looks like that, yeah. So these are those three links we just created, but they're not doing anything right now. They're just blank links. And next I will go to angular.io, and it's Angular's documentation, and we'll see what are they saying about their router module. So the first and the basic thing is that you must have a base element there for routing to work. And if I see in my HTML, sorry, in my index.html page, I can see that there is a base element already present. Okay. Other than that, the next step is to import router related stuff into your module, into your basic module, or the main module. So router stuff is not in the core thing, the Angular core library. It has its own angular.router library. Using that library, we are going to import this stuff here. Okay. And in the next step is to actually set up the routes. So how the routes are set up are actually in the imports section of your import section of your app module, the main module. You have to tell where is your array where the routes are set up. So you have to give an array of type routes, and you have to inject that array in the import section of your main module, and in this fashion it will know where to look for the routes, and everything will work from there on. So what we are going to do is that we are going to create this constant array of type routes here, and then we will call our first path first, and then this is an example of a route which takes a parameter. This is an example of a route which takes a data. This is an example if the path someone entered does not exist, then where one should go. This is an example of that. So what we're going to do here is that we will have a first path, we will have a second path. We don't need this example right now, so I'm going to take it out. And then we don't need an example with data right now, so I'm going to take this thing out. And then if somebody tries to go to slash, we will redirect them to a component which is our app component. So all I'm going to do is app component, the main component which already exists. app component. In the case somebody enter a bad route, let's take them to the app component. Normally you create an error page and take them there. And then we need to create two components actually. So the first component is going to be called first component, and second component is going to be called second component. Okay. So now the next step is to create these two components and then inject them here. So to create these two components, I'm going to the folder structure again, and then in the sources, in the app folder, I'm going to create first component, and I'm going to use Angular CLI's command there. So the command I'm using here is ng generate component first component. Let's call it a component, but component. Yep, that is correct. Okay. So as you can see, our first component folder is created here, and if I go into the code, I can see that the first component is here, and we also have something called first component. It has actually used appended everything with the word component. So let me create it again. So instead of using the word component, I'm just going to say first. So ng generate component and first. So now it has created a folder first. In that we have first.component.cs, first.component.html, first.component.the TypeScript file, and the testing file. And you can see the same thing here. So this is our first component, and let's call it, let's say this is the first component, and same way let's create a second component. So I'm going to go to Angular CLI again, and we'll create a second component. While the second component is being loaded, let's see what are the next steps here. So we have created our path, but we still have to inject it into our imports section. So we are going to do that using this router module. And router module will just inject our routes like this. So we'll go back to our module, and here in our import section we are going to do this, and we have IP routes here. As you can see, using Angular CLI, the first component was also injected in the route. The first and second component were also automatically injected in the routes, and we just have to take this out because we created this by mistake. Yeah. So here's the thing. So now in our routes are set up, and then we have our first and second component already injected here, and we can and then we are also using them in the imports, and we also have set up that if somebody calls a blank path or path does not exist, which is the component you have to load. And in the meanwhile, our second component is also there, and just to remind that this is the second component, let's call it component. So now the next step is to actually load this component when somebody clicks the links. For that, we have to use this thing called a router outlet. So all the contents of those component will go below the router outlet. So what we are going to do here is that in our app app component, we will have these things, our home and all these links. Just below that we are going to load the the contents of those components which will be loaded when we will click on these components. So this is our app component is right now acting as a master page here. If you know the master page, old master page concept, so it's kind of the same concept here. So once we put this router outlet here, we have to actually bind these anchor tags to navigate to a specific route, so that it can navigate to a specific route. How we will do that is by using something called a router link. In a router link, we will actually tell which is the link you should go when somebody click here. So if somebody click here, we want to go to home page. If somebody click here, we want to go to a path called first, and that path will load the first component. And if somebody goes here, we want to go to a path called second, which will load the second component. And we will see if it works. So now we have to do a little bit of a change here. We actually cannot do home like this. We have to actually create a home component if we want. So I'm going to just take this out, and then in our routes, I'm going to say that in our routes, I'm going to simply say that if somebody is going to first, load the first component. If somebody is going to second, load the second component. And I'm going to take this route out for now. And if somebody is is not sure where they're going, or they put in a wrong route, we will try to load the app component, but we should have a specific component for actually loading error messages. And then I hit save, and then I will just refresh it. Actually, I also had to take out that error condition thing. So it's just as simple as, if somebody wants to go to first, load the first component. If somebody wants to go to second, load the second component. And if I refresh here, you can see that we have these two links here. And if somebody goes to the first page, a first component loads. If somebody wants to go to the second page, second component loads. So our navigation is working. That's pretty much it.